the country loses about $26 billion annually, to gaps in the tax system. Perhaps if those gaps are plugged and we had close to this 26 billion plowed back into the economy, perhaps it could do something. Well, let's see what others think about it, apart from Mr. Oyedele, with Mr. Eben Joels, who's the managing partner at Transact, and joins us here in the studio. Mr. Joels, a good afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. So is this figure, does it look outrageous? Does it sound normal when Mr. Oyedele says that the country loses about $26 billion due to tax gaps in the tax system in the country?
Well, I think he may be looking at maybe the total pot of incentives given to companies in Nigeria. Maybe that is the total pot, not losses per se. Government it's like a chicken and egg approach, where government gives you incentives, they give you tax-free period. Take, for example, in the days when MTN and all the GSM companies came, they had tax-free periods during which they were expected to invest a lot in Nigeria. Some of the biggest companies in Nigeria enjoy such incentives. During the period when they are enjoying that incentive, you're supposed to see a quantum effect of their activities in how many people they are employing. So government may not have the cash, but the value that those companies are adding to the economy should suffice, should be more than the tax that the government is losing. But the issue is that most times, these incentives may not be given to the right companies. And I think that is what we should focus on.
So let's focus there now. If you say they're not being given to the right companies, are you implying that it's not been as effective as it should be? Perhaps that is why Mr. Oyedele is also saying that that gap has cost us this much money.
Yes, that is also related to what the chairman of the FIRS said recently about the road construction tax credit scheme. Yeah, so they're not all as effective.
But a lot of people applaud that scheme, and it's supposed to help us close our infrastructural deficit.
Yes, but knowing Nigeria, knowing the corruption that runs in the system, and let's hope that it doesn't run in our DNA, which will become very, very dangerous for us as a people. How do you value the road that is being constructed by one company? A lot of subjectivity will come into that. And for a businessman that is less than honest, rather than paying 100 naira as taxes, for example, I can construct a 20 million naira road and claim 100 naira taxes, credits. And don't forget, that whole road infrastructure credit scheme is a bit dangerous because you can sell that credit to another company. By simply saying, I have this tax credit for constructing this road, I'm selling it to you. So those are some of the things that makes these things don't work as planned.
But would you say it's the business people now, or is it the system, the tax system, that should be transparent? Unfortunately, it's still human beings that are running.
Yeah. So the issue is we as a people. It's not so much as the tax system in itself. It's we Nigerians, is our mindset. I was just thinking the other day that a lot of us Nigerians go out and complain the federal government is not doing this. But beyond taxes that we pay as indirect taxes, I hope you and I know that we don't pay personal taxes to the federal government. We pay our personal taxes to the states in which we live. Now, I remember years ago, a Senate president in this country said his total tax for a year in his tax clearance certificate from his state was 88,000 naira. That was my own tax paid as a first level staff in the accounting firm where I was then. So you see a situation.
So what's wrong with the system there?
That's a big one. Fundamental issues. You take big federal systems like we have. Nigeria is supposed to be a federal system, and one of the biggest federal systems we can compare ourselves with will be the United States of America. There is a personal income tax that is payable to the center, that is payable. It may not be, in some instances, like in the case of the US, that is the main tax you pay. You pay your personal income taxes to the center. Based on that, the center then has data of everybody, has data of who underprivileged people are. and then make a cash refund to them based on the data that they have, that you submitted in your tax returns. But here we have a system where we don't have that kind of data at the center. And that is why you are still having the kind of monumental corruption we hear about at the ministry of, the ministry that is supposed to be to take care of humanitarians and the less privileged.
Yeah, but I mean, I've spoken to a couple of stakeholders in the tax industry, and they talk a whole lot about the adoption of technology. Is it not widespread enough? Or is it still lip service?
No, technology adoption in Nigeria, tax-wise, is relatively nascent. You know what I mean? It's just in the last 3-4 years. And this is one of the areas where we should commend the Federal Inland Revenue Service, because they built, they built the current platform we are using. They built it themselves. Now, because taxes for states, the states have their own internal revenue service, and they are not all at the same level. Apart from the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, the level of standardization of operations of most internal revenue services across Nigeria is very rudimentary. Some of them, they are even worse than they were 10, 15 years ago. Because what's happened is, rather than professionalize the state internal revenue service, most states have politicians running the internal revenue services. So you have to marry these things.
So that's for state governors?
That is for states.
Perhaps.
But don't forget, I just told you that most people pay their taxes to the state.
Yes.
The people who pay their personal income taxes.
And it's still at that state that we have the complaints of multiple taxation.
Yes, because the personal income tax scheme is fairly not standardized in the way they apply them in those states, in some of those states. They resort to crude tactics and paying attention to taxes that maybe ultimately doesn't contribute as much to the bottom line, but it's easier to collect for them by using the same thugs that help them win elections. So you just...
So I mean, it just sounds like perhaps the country is not even ready to clean up its tax system.
It's a work in progress. The country the Nigerians are not isolated from Nigeria, so it's a work in progress. As we fix the country, the tax system will be getting fixed, because there's a lot of things I tell tax administrators and people who who are saddled with increasing tax collection in any system. Tax is ultimately a trust business. It's based on trust. If the citizens don't trust you, they're not going to be willing to pay taxes.
Maybe that's where to start from, because if you talk to 10 Nigerians, I bet 9 of them will tell you they don't trust the system. We've been paying taxes and we don't see what it's doing. We still have to communities on estates have to come together to work on their roads, provide power, and all of that. So perhaps it is for the government to win the trust of the people first.
Yeah, that's why I said it's a work in progress. That as we start fixing Nigeria...
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress. As we start fixing Nigeria...
Sorry, I just want to know, is there a work in progress? Or we just say it's a work in progress?
I want to believe so. I want to believe so.
Any signs of that?
Well, I'd rather repeat the words of the managing partner of one of the big firms in those days, who said, based on the laws of statistics, that with our population, in another 75 years or thereabout, Nigeria will have more human beings living in it than any other country in the world apart from China and India. We'll be close to 1 billion people. So somehow, we should be able to have a critical mass of people, 1 or 2 more people who are thinking in the right direction that will push us.
How would you assess the work so far of Mr. Oyedele's committee?
Well, I think he's, first of all, we've worked together in the past, so, and...
so you're going to answer based on sentiment?
So that is why I'm trying to be careful to say, okay, do I answer you this way? And you will say, am I trying
just
to...
objective.
Or am I
follow
being,
the data?
So I think the first thing is he's done a lot more sensitization on, what tax is, and more people are aware of taxes. He's done a lot, especially in the selection of university students as part of his committee. He did a lot of sensitization. But the impact of the work of his committee, we're going to be waiting to see it. It's going to take time for us to see it. It may not be as immediate. I don't know how widely he has consulted, but I believe that that is why they chose him. I also know that he's someone who puts in time to whatever he's committed to doing. He puts in the time. So I hope that he comes out well. But we are all waiting.
The focus, even the advice from the Bretton Woods institutions is expand the tax net, even though they say our taxes are really low and all of that. But I mean, that expansion of that tax net, obviously we need trust on the one hand, and on the other hand, we need technology.
No doubt, you're correct, but the trust part, is the harder part. And because it's easier to destroy trust than to build it, as they say. And trust that has been constantly abused since 1999. And some people will say, since 1960. And some people will even say since 1914. For Nigerians, there's been no government that has built the trust that it should have, which is people. I'll give you one last example, because I was thinking about it and I was like, even the developed countries, who have all the resources and say they are capitalists, there's something they don't take for granted. The old and the young ones, So you get to a country where you have to pay for health. But when it comes to young kids and when it comes to people who are 60 or 65 and above, the state takes care of them. The elderly people's homes in America, for example, or senior living facilities, as they call them, is one of the highest employers of labor. And it's actually one of the highest employers of our own people that are emigrating. We don't even have that here. We leave our own old people, right, to be taken care of by relatives. But we've forgotten that there's been a change in demography. In the last few years, we don't have as much committed young people going back to the village to take care of their old ones. And that whole industry is something that, should we decide to say, okay, as a national strategy, we're going to you start building trust. That is one. Two, is a whole industry that has a tendency to employ a whole lot of people across the 700. And you're not sharing money to people as humanitarian aid. People are actually having facilities where they are taking their sick old ones too. And the state is paying for that everywhere in the world. Even for states that are not communist, they are not socialist, they're capitalist countries. So those are small things that the government can do to build trust. I think the government should do some of those low-hanging fruits, start building trust. The tax net will naturally increase. Wow.
Okay, we'll see if the government will adopt that strategy to expand the tax number. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Eben Joels, the managing partner at Stransact.
Thank you.